I'm here at the Commemorative Air Force Museum in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, Mesa, Arizona. And they have some old World War II and vintage aircraft here. Oh, here's also British Royal Navy jet, looks like. And you can see a B-52 or bomber there, old bombers. It looks like they actually fly these things. I think this is a B-29, if I'm not mistaken. You can see the 50 caliber machine gun here. He has B-176 on the back of his shirt there. I guess they take people for rides in these old planes. B-17, that big one.
Yep, they're mostly administrative. We fly more airplanes than anybody. We have more members. We have 450 members, largest member count. Most flying airplanes. We're the big ones. We're not. They call the small ones squadrons and the medium-sized wings. We're actually Air Base Arizona. We're the only air base. So we're pretty proud of that. We, as you guys may have figured out, we do all the work, all the flying. All the restoration is done by members. The gift shop is run by members. Everything here is a member-driven thing. All volunteers. We all do this for love. It's a lot of work, guys. It's a ton of work, and it costs a ton of money. We put the number 1 engine back on the 17 in January, and just a short block, just the there are so many in salvage places, the engines are still rigorous. But yeah, there's parts are the easiest to find for them. The hardest to find for them. B-17s are hard to find. So the one behind me is a C-45. You can buy a ride on it. It's a fun ride. It's a 1930s short hop airliner. Would have flown like Phoenix to LA. So let's go over to the 17. Yeah, sure. I've been on Midway. Yeah, it's in land. Yeah. Yeah. And then nothing lands like it did. We don't have it. I also went up to the street. All right, you guys gather up there. We'll tell you about this bird. So our B-17 sentimental turn. Still going to make that aircraft. Once you guys gather in with this, I won't have to yell at it. It gets hoarse around here. So I mentioned we acquired this in '78. Members bought it and donated it to us. It started life in the South Pacific, but did not get there in time for combat. So it got to the South Pacific too late. The war was over with, and they used it in the South Pacific for mapping and photo recon. It served its tour in the Army Air Corps and then later Air Force as a photo recon and mapping program. When we got to the South Pacific in '41, our maps were horrible. All we had was merchant marine maps, and that basically was how to get from one port to another. So all the little dinky islands, we didn't even know they were there. So we spent an inordinate amount of time flying around the South Pacific in leftover multi-engine aircraft to map the South Pacific. We put a dot on the map every time we found a rock sticking out of the water. We did a lot of it. So then it came back here to the States, was retired and put in Davis Moffett in the mothball down in Tucson, and was sold to a aerial firefighting company in Chico, California, and it was a Boré bomber, which is the pink stuff they dump on forest fires. It was a Boré bomber, a water bomber, for 17 years. So 17 years is about 6 lifetimes for B-17. It had already put in 1 lifetime in the South Pacific, and then we got it in '76. So it had already served its full life before we ever laid hands on it. So the first 8 years we worked on it outdoors in the dirt. In 1985 we built this hangar, pushed it inside, and kept working on it. 26 years later, we finished it with the original G configuration. The twin gun in the turret on the nose makes it a G. It was built as a G. Again, late in the war. So, 13 guns, 10 crew, M50 Browning 1921 aviation modified machine guns. They're bore-sighted for 1,000 yards, which is what the guys were trained to shoot at. They didn't want to shoot. It'll reach farther than that, but the accuracy starts going down when you're shooting a moving target. So they train them to shoot 1,000 yards or less. There are gun sights on the aircraft that come together and trigger an action down. So rangefinder, the 2 things are cut. So there's some of those, there's some optical sights different ways from those. So at the beginning of the war.
So wait for me. Okay.
At the beginning of the war, the first B-17s to get to England, and the first mission was August of 1942, sorry. Does anybody remember the name Paul Tibbets?
It's a Russian B-21.
He flew the B-29 Enola Gay that dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. He was also the first mission commander of the first B-17 raid in England.
60s and 70s.
Same guy. So he had a long and memorable service. So they flew 2 B-17s from England over to the sub-10s in France and were escorted by about 6 Spitfires, and they bombed the submarine pens and both airplanes come back. So that was the very first mission, August of '42. So the 8th Air Force was formed up in East Anglia, which is kind of southeast England, and that's where all the B-17 strips were at. So the 8th Air Force flew out of there. Air Force was made up of, a squadron was 12 aircraft, 4 squadrons was a group, 3 groups were a wing. 3 wings were generally a bomber formation. That's 450 airplanes, but none of them ever got all their airplanes up in one day. It's more likely it's something like 350. It was one of those bomb formations that the movies used to try to show you pictures of. So at the beginning of the war, there was bomb formations made up of 360 airplanes. We lost 90 at the beginning. That's 1/4. So that was devastating for the amount of losses, 1/4. So by the end of the war then, we'd added more guns to the B-17. We got the P-51 with superchargers and got it up there at altitude with this one. And they escorted the bombers all the way to Berlin and back. That cut the odds down to a tenth of what they'd been at the beginning of the war. So survivability during the course of the war went up. A couple reasons, right? The Germans started thinning out. We started thickening up. That was obvious, you know. But at the beginning of the war, Hitler only had 220 fighters in West Europe. All the rest of them were in Eastern Europe. So it really wasn't that many fighters. More likely it was flat. That's what happened. Not a lot of them. One hit from an 88 was enough to take it out of the sky. Whereas one hit from a fighter is unlikely, even if it went through the engine. We have a picture, motion picture taken from the cockpit of the top cylinder gone on the number 3 engine. And you can see the connecting rod doing this. And it ran that way all the way back in. So tough old bird, right? 4 1,200 horsepower R1, I forgot the number. Anyway, 1,200 horsepower, consuming 50, 60 gallons per hour each. So fuel usage on a flight was 200 to 240 gallons per hour. So they didn't just fill her up with either bombs or gas. What they did was balance the load as to where they were going on the mission. So if you're going from East Anglia in England to the submarine pens on the coast of Normandy, you got lots of bombs and not as much gas. I get tired of the noise when you're talking, especially young Mississippi. So depending on where you were going, how much bombs and gas you took. If you're going to the sub pens, lots of bombs and not as much gas. If you're going to Warsaw, lots of gas and not as much bombs. So you never just said fill her up, because if you did that with bombs and gas, it wouldn't get off the ground. It's capable of carrying a lot more than it was capable of lifting. Sounds odd, but that's what it's true. So it had about a 36,000 pound empty weight and about a 56,000 pound flying weight. There's 20K weight in there, but you can't haul that. Again, it was, yeah, so they say 10,000 pounds of bombs, but only if they were taking a plant of gas. So it depended entirely on the bomber. All right, I think, yeah, all right, we can get around. Come on, we'll go through that. All right, all right, so you start your tour here on the lower flight deck, only about 3 foot high, so you're going to crawl in and look forward, and you'll see the bombardier and the navigator. Then you're going to crawl back about 4 feet, stand up, and you're in the crew chief, flight engineer's position. Look forward, you see the pilot and co-pilot's position. If you turn around, there's a couple of steps you can step up on, and you're in the top turret gun position. Okay? You make your way through that, now you walk through the bomb bay. There's only an 8-inch wide catwalk and about a 40 clearance on your hips. So some of this enjoy a couple cheeseburgers are going to have to turn sideways to get through there. Okay? Make your way then into the radio compartment. You'll find the gun that you can ever find. It's a 13 gun. It's stowed overhead in the radio compartment, and it's on rail. So you can open the slide, a window hatch open, and push the gun out and back. So he was held for a back and up. Mostly back was the tail, mostly up was the top turret, but the radio was up back. So that's a 13 gun. You get to the radio operating position. You'll notice on the wall coming out the hand cranks. The hand cranks on the wall. We're cranking down the nose and the main gear in order to get it. You've seen that. Every B-17 movie they made had a crank to do it. If you look to a good rep one, I think that Bell is probably as good as they're still talking to each other. The crew at a crew position has 3 plug ins. He has his headset, he has his oxygen, and he has a super video that you can plug in. There's a wristband on it, 800 man, plugged in the plug in. Then they're in full sheepskin, pants, jacket, boots, helmet, headset, oxygen mask, and usually a scarf over that to try to keep that. They're not chatting with each other. I swear, they didn't talk to each other. They're at 29,000 feet. The outside air temperature is minus 60. The skin temperature is matching the outside air temperature. So this is not a comfortable environment to stand next to each other and BS. They didn't do that. And you stayed off the intercom, the pilot of the kid in the back said, look, take your time, turn your hand around the other way. We're being like we're being cool. So if you swap your hat around, not going in, swap your hat around or you'll bump your head. I guarantee it. There's no head turn. You can look in the bomb bay if you'd like to see. Take your time, guys. Don't hurry.
Gonna go up in there? No? Have you seen them?
So everybody knows who the nose art is, right?
Pretty good.
Betty Grable. Why she turned that direction? Yeah.
No baby bump to show.
Yeah, the baby bump showing on our $1 million leg. You can't have a baby with $1 million leg. Yeah.